right, stocks mostly higher today, as you heard from Susan just moments ago. Investors are kind of brushing off some of those trade worries, but take a look at this chart right now. China's trade surplus with the U.S. hitting a record high last month, nearly $29 billion, as exporters rush to beat new tariffs on Chinese goods. Joining me right now is Vision for Fund Vice President Heather Zamoranga, along with Kingview Asset Management CIO Scott Martin. Good to see you guys both here. Scott, I'm going to start with you because there's been this kind of hysteria out there, right? People are so worried about a trade war, and we keep hearing about the 1930s and Smoot-Hawley, et cetera, et cetera. But yet, the market's higher today. It was higher yesterday. It did kind of well last week. I mean, what is it that the sort of hysteria-filled bears are missing?
Well, the market's taking it well. You're right about that, Trish. You know, we've had a few hiccups, but my goodness, those have only been purchased by the smart investors, which we've been recommending. So that's good for you and everyone out there that's done that. Here's the thing. I think the market believes that this is all going to get worked out to some favorable outcome. I think the market thinks that this is part of Donald Trump's negotiating tactic. It's also a believer, I think, Trish, that both countries, the way that we've set things up so far, have something to lose here, and that's probably not good and something that's obviously going to drive us to maybe come to some favorable resolution. So while we've talked about all these tariffs and these trade wars, you know, upping the ante to $100 billion, to $200 billion, and $300 and so forth, to me, it says that the market is saying, you know what, this is just the negotiating tactics to what's going to be a favorable resolution, what I think is going to be an eventual more free trade environment when we get through this.
Heather, would you add to that maybe investors know something that some of the naysayers and hysterical bears right now don't, in that we are the world's #1 largest consumer? In other words, China kind of needs us because we buy their stuff. If we say, you know, we're just not going to do it anymore, there's going to be too many tariffs, so Americans are going to go out and seek other sources of goods. Isn't that actually going to, I know it's going to hurt us, but sure, isn't it going to hurt China more?
China more. Yes, I do think it'll hurt China more. It's already hurting the Chinese economy much more, way more than the U.S. The Shanghai index has just entered bear market territory last month, down 20% from its highs. So they stand to lose a lot more than the U.S. does. But I'm not sure that the markets know more than the average person on the resolution of trade. I think most economists agree that President Trump is right to criticize some of the unfair trading practices like the theft of IT coming out of China. It's just the solution, the method of the solution to get there that some are criticizing, especially these new $200 billion threatening tariffs at 10% this week.
I've heard that a lot. They don't like the method, but what's the alternative? I mean, Scott, for goodness sakes, no other method has worked, right? So why not call them out? Why not call these tariffs out and say enough? I get it, like people don't like his style, but nothing else we've been trying has worked, and they're still stealing $600 billion worth of intellectual property every year.
Yeah, and increasing that amount, Trish, as fast as they can. I agree. You know, sometimes you got to bring the hot water with you. And you're right. A lot of the folks on the left have not liked those tactics. And I think, you know, every day that goes by, they're starting to kind of bite their nails.
Senate Republicans don't like it either. I mean, they just passed a bipartisan bill on Wednesday that wanted to rein this in.
That's true, Heather, at their own peril. Now, here's the only thing I do worry about, though, guys. I don't want to kind of spike the party punch here, but I will tell you, it's not just as simple as saying, okay, China, take a long walk off a short pier, and we're not going to buy your stuff anymore. I mean, last time I checked, because of regulations, workers, costs here, we can't make all that stuff unless you guys want to start paying, you know, $300, $400, $500 for a Walkman, which is a good throwback to a technical piece I used to love back in the 80s. It's going to cost a lot of money to make a lot of stuff here unless we work these trade deals out.
Okay. Point taken. So maybe it's a little tricky in the interim. Hey, let me just ask you a question, though. Heather, would you be willing to pay more if you knew that your iPhone was made here in the United States than if it was made in China?
So I've heard Fox Business's Charles Payne say he ran a survey prior to President Trump's tariff asking Americans if they would be willing to pay more, and most said yes. I know that he's reiterated that many times. I know. I'm not sure if I believe it. He asked me personally.
I do believe it. I totally believe it, because I think that there's a patriotism there. Americans, they know that if something's made here, it is supporting
But look at
worker
Harley
here.
Davidson. Their consumers, their customers, their base are made in USA. People who buy Harley Davidson bikes want a bike made in the U.S. They're still looking abroad because of these tariffs. So that does concern me. But to be honest,
Maybe
I get a
there'll
lot
be
of
some
stuff
real
on
pressure.
Amazon. Most of it's probably made in
Maybe
China,
Harley
but I should start
Davidson's
changing
customers
that.
will start pressuring it to say,
Yes.
hey, you know, make as much as you can
Come
here.
back.
I
Yeah.
just think that, you know, when you think of all the money we waste paying out disability checks and other, you know, forms of assistance, when you have the opportunity to employ more people here, even if it means paying a little bit more for that good, maybe it means we save a little bit in taxes in terms of all the transfers of funds that happen to people who don't have jobs, who can't work, who can't find a decent position. Something to think about anyway. Heather and Scott, thank you. We're going to be right back.